RNC Youth Chairman, Brilyn Hollyhand. Brilyn, let's talk about that younger generation I was talking about just a little bit before, because we know there was a big swing to President Trump for Gen Z voters in November. And you are trying to keep that momentum going. You have a new book called One Generation Away, Why Now is the Time to Restore American Freedom. And I wonder if you can explain just why President Trump is beating years of tradition and making it possible for a Republican, or at least a conservative, whatever you want to label Donald Trump, to get that youth vote.
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning, Jake. Happy Tuesday. I appreciate the opportunity to come on your great show this morning. Let me be clear. President Trump is sitting in the Oval Office this morning because of Gen Z, because my fellow peers, my fellow first-time voters got out and supported President Trump. I know that's a big statement to make, but I made a big statement previously in 2023 when I joined the RNC Advisory Council. I told President Trump that the only way he wins this election in the landslide that he wants is by reaching out to Gen Z. And everybody told me I was crazy. They said, we can't win young people. The DNC has this monopoly on them. We'll try to get another group. We'll try some other way. Maybe we can skim off a little bit, but there's no way we win Gen Z. And I said, yes, you can, if you reach out and make an effort to. Because at the time, we knew Joe Biden was the nominee. And we knew Joe Biden couldn't sit down and have a conversation with Gen Z or stay awake to. And then we got Kamala Harris, who couldn't even form sentences without a word salad to have a conversation with Gen Z. All President Trump had to do was sit down and have an authentic, relatable conversation. And he did that. He did that through TikTok. He did that through podcasting. He did that through non-traditional political means in a non-traditional election cycle. And it paid off. And he won every single swing state.
Yeah. Now to a specific youth movement. There are programmers and auditors on Elon Musk's Doge team that are still literally teenagers. And when one of those teenagers was called out for some ugly social media postings in his even younger past, I mean, we're talking about a 19-year-old, so I guess we were talking about a 16-year-old. He was briefly suspended, but then he was brought back. Because President Trump and Elon Musk simply don't care about what the cancel culture says. And as a young political activist yourself, how does this youth movement look to you in this administration right now?
Yeah, the golden age of America has returned. President Trump was clear about that in his inauguration address. He's been clear about that, in his first 3 weeks in office. And part of that is canceling cancel culture, making it free to be an American again without the fear of being canceled. And let me just say on this specific case, this young staffer on Elon's team that's helping cut government waste and spending that has crippled my generation with $33 trillion in debt is 19 years old. Do you remember somebody else that was 19 years old and had a big role in government? Alexander Hamilton, when he signed the Declaration of Independence, was 19 years old. Another guy's got a Broadway musical after him because of how much of an impact he had on the nation. This country was founded by young patriots. It is no crazy novel idea that young patriots should still have the reins today. That should still be having the baton passed to them to take over and save the country. I commend this young guy. I agree with Vice President Vance when they say that we've got to give somebody a second chance. Do we need to go through all of the journalists who have made inflammatory remarks in their past, who are now, taking the moral high ground and calling out this guy? I don't think they want us to do that, Jake.
Yeah, and if you go through all of my social media posts, you'll just find a lot of angry comments about the Jets. So, don't bother. Although I feel sorry for any human being who has to go through all my. I post very extensively on X and on Facebook, and I'm interacting with the folks here on Getter. There's a lot of work to do. I think by the time they get through my material, they'll be basically retired. Brilyn, young people. We talk about young people, and we talked about young people in government, but there's been one part of government where young people have always been the priority and been needed. And that's the military. I mean, that's obvious. And we're learning that under President Biden and the Biden team, our active duty members were getting zinged with lots of DEI ideology and policies. Now, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is rooting all of that out. He's trying to get rid of it. Something like $300 million a year just on these kinds of programs. Now, we saw in December very high new recruitment numbers. I think that was all about the election of President Trump. Obviously, nothing had been done yet. But do you think that getting rid of these kinds of programs that aren't really about being physically fit, being tough, getting ready to fight, do you think getting rid of those programs will help continue this upward surge in recruitment?
Absolutely. So the Pentagon saw its largest recruitment numbers in 12 years this January. And that's after Pete Hegseth, a friend of mine, spent 2 months going out on TV interviews, going out in press conferences and saying that DEI is going to die at the Pentagon when he comes in. And that message was loud and clear, and Gen Z listened to that, and now there's patriotism back in this nation. And it's a wonderful thing. And I've got to say, the last conversation Pete Hegseth and I had in person, we bumped into each other in a green room in Milwaukee during the convention a few months back during the summer. And this is one of the topics that came up because obviously he's always been a big military advocate. And he was asking why Gen Z recruitment numbers are so low, why patriotism is at such a low. And I said it's simply because the media and this deep state narrative is constantly shoving woke propaganda and ideology down our throat. And he said, you really think that's like making Gen Z not want to get out? And I said, that's absolutely what is making Gen Z not want to get out and enlist. And so we've had some text conversations since he's actually been, confirmed, and stuff like this right here is going to change the course of our military history and military recruitment, because thankfully we have somebody that's coming in and willing to say, okay, take the woke nonsense out. Let's get back to war fighting. Let's get back to protecting the nation, and let's get back to reviving patriotism. That's what President Trump's done. That's what Pete Hegseth's done, and I can think of no better person to lead our military than Pete Hegseth.
Yeah. Now, when he's texting you, is he giving you like a workout regime? I would be afraid that he'd be texting me telling me I need to do some work. Hey, Brilyn, let's have a fun for a second here.
Yeah.
Because I think that this is an aspect of President Trump's appeal to at least young men, maybe young women as well. I think he may be doing better because of his sense of humor. And we saw a little bit of that, yesterday and the day before, about when he spoke to Piers Morgan and said he's not going to deport Prince Harry because Prince Harry has enough trouble with his own wife, Meghan Markle. I mean, that's the kind of joke that maybe some older pearl clutchers would say, oh, the president shouldn't say that. But, if I'm a younger person, if I were a lot younger, I would definitely laugh at that. And I would find that kind of funny. I mean, I think that there's a little bit more humanity in President Trump. And sometimes that's a little bit, maybe they say that's a little bit immature or a little bit biting, but that's what makes him a real human being. And I think, does that connect him with people your age and younger?
It 100% does. I spent 2.5 years in the campaign trail supporting President Trump. And the final month before the election, I spoke on 10 college campuses alone. And it was a lot easier to pitch a candidate to voters who is relatable, who's authentic, who doesn't speak like a robot, who doesn't walk out and read a consultant talking point script, who's genuinely funny, who genuinely has a sense of humor, who genuinely has a personality, something that's rare in Washington, D.C., Jake. Last week, we commemorated Ronald Reagan's 114th birthday. Somebody else that had some wit and wisdom to him. Somebody else that could throw in a few jokes there when appropriate and get the crowd on his side. That's a gift that Donald Trump has. Being the great communicator part two and coming into the Oval Office, not just to be able to tweet, but to be able to make light in dark situations and kind of just bring some hope to the country is a great gift of President Trump. I said earlier that we got him on TikTok and podcasting. His humor is something that really shone through in both of those platforms. Those are really important ways I think history is going to look back on and say that's how President Trump won the youth vote, because he was prevalent on TikTok, because he had the fastest growing account in TikTok history, because he sat down and did 3 or 4 hour podcasts with some of the top influencers in the world and just sat and went back and forth just having fun with the guys, whether it's talking about sports or talking about, Prince Harry, just something fun and lighthearted and relatable, not this heavy political nonsense that's turned Gen Z off for too long. That's absolutely why he's sitting in the Oval Office today. You're right.
Yeah, and by the way, just as a piece of advice, this goes both ways. Obviously, you know this. But speaking to young people out there and parents of young people, I grew up interacting with adults maybe even more than I did with kids. That was just the communities that I lived in. If you have a young person who can speak comfortably with an adult at a young age, they really have a leg up. Hey, Brilyn Hollyhand, thanks you so much for joining us. Have a great rest of your week. Next time you come, I want to talk about how young women might be more interested in supporting President Trump, because I think this is mostly about young men right now, and that's a big change. But next time I want to talk about what can be done about that. All right. Thanks for joining us.
Good. Thank you, Jake. Have a good week.